Okay, so this video is going to give you an example of how one of the perspectives and theories within that perspective, symbolic interactionism, might study culture. So it's just a taste of different elements of culture that would be of very much interest to theorists and researchers within this area, and just give you a sense of how they've expanded on our understanding of what culture is, how it operates, how we're impacted by it. So, symbolic interactionists, if you remember from our introduction and definition of it earlier, they argue that we create society, we create reality out of our interactions, our symbolic interactions with other people. So that carries through here to a discussion of culture, meaning that culture is socially constructed. We create, as members of the society, we create our culture and maintain it and reproduce it. So social constructions matter because they're collectively held beliefs. And that is something that has been that means that something that has been successfully socially constructed when the majority of people in a culture agree on its meaning and then operate and act as on that shared meaning. Yet once something has been collectively constructed or adopted, those social constructions then become very difficult to change. And that's important because culture exists, you know, for quite a long time, and elements of it, can need to exist for quite a long time, because remember, our definition of culture is something that's passed on from person to person, generation to generation. So you can't have anything that's changing daily or yearly in place here. So I'm going to give you an example of this, an example of how a social construction, once it's been established, is really difficult to change, and particularly difficult to change by any one individual. So here on the screen, this is a loonie, and we all agree currently that this is the equivalent of $1 worth of money. So it symbolizes, so this is an example of a symbol, a socially constructed symbol, like this actual material object symbolizes a certain amount of buying power. However, you could, one day wake up and decide, no, I think the loonie symbolizes 100 times that buying power. So the loonie, I want it to mean and symbolize $100 worth of, buying power. You can decide that, go ahead, but the cashier that you try to explain that this isn't going to care too much about your own individual redefinition of this symbol. So the socially constructed definition of the symbol has a power and it has an inertia that exists beyond an individual's ability to change it. And this holds for all, socially constructed meanings. For example, no matter how much we dislike the fact that people are judged and treated differently according to the color of their skin, we just can't decide to personally ignore race and therefore expect racial inequality to disappear. The color of a person's skin is consequential in our society, whether we personally acknowledge it or not. Saying that we don't see race doesn't erase those consequences, particularly for those people who are in certain groups. Social constructions, however, can change, but only through collective action. Groups can actively try to renegotiate meanings, and with sustained effort, those meanings do change. So for example, earlier example I gave you when talking about symbols and colors and pink equals girl, blue equals boy, we already saw how that did change once already throughout our collective history. And even more recently, there has been maybe not a complete redefinition of pink being only associated with women and girls, but there's definitely been a lessening of the pink is only for girls type of meaning when it comes to that color. And such, and we can look at some evidence that suggests that, and that pink has become a bit more of an acceptable color for boys or men to wear. And this actually started back, way before your time, but I remember the 1980s, and a very successful, very popular TV show at that time was Miami Vice. And Don Johnson in particular, so he's the gentleman here on the left, through the clothing and the costumes that he wore on that show, popularized the pastel pink in the early 1980s. And so you started to see men in real life also wearing pink, pastel pink, more and more often. Even though 80s again was a long time ago, I did a quick, just Google search, and I found, a lot of more recent pictures of celebrities on red carpets, or actually pink carpets, now that I look at it here, wearing, so pink and red carpets, wearing pink. So this has become, quite, acceptable, and popular and fashionable in today's times. Even, I didn't ask it, but AI Copilot told me when I was doing this search that men wearing pink now is not only acceptable, but it can be a bold fashion statement that reflects confidence and style. So that's really cool to see. Go back actually not that long ago though, however, so it's good to see this sort of really contemporary embracing of, and this association of pink and masculinity in a significant way. But going back about 10 years, 20 years. Oh my goodness, it was longer than I thought it was. But there was this news story in 2006 of a high school over in Nova Scotia there, where one of the students, a young student, male student, wore a pink tank top to school one day and got bullied for it. Some of his other classmates, though, saw this, and then the next day or shortly thereafter, they bought 75 pink tank tops, and they asked others to wear this in solidarity to really kind of try and change this sort of association of the color with a certain gender and gender identity there. And so this is a really cool and a really good example of an attempt to try and redefine and reconstruct the meaning of pink in this particular instance here. And it started as this group, within this setting there, and then actually grew to, a larger movement, such that nationally now in February 26th in particular, is now known as Pink Shirt Day in Canada, as this sort of larger awareness and movement to try and, anti-violence, anti-bullying movement within Canadian society. So that's an example of how social constructions can and do change, but it is really only a collective effort on that part. So in this way, social movements can be understood in part as collective efforts to change socially constructed ideas about the world, to change socially constructed ideas, values, beliefs, language, symbols, and norms as well. And we will look at social movements. Our last topic in the course will be the social movements here, but they fit so nicely in here. So social movements are collective efforts to change socially constructed elements of culture in a positive way. So for example, just two social movements, the women's movement and the civil rights movements have had had campaigns and aspects of them around changing connotations of words to be more inclusive. Within the women's movement, there was a slogan during the 1970s aspect of the women's movement that feminism is the radical idea that women are people, which sadly by this picture, is still a sign, and in more contemporary protests associated with the women's movement or women's rights is still sort of a slogan that are included. So this is about changing the term, people, and trying to really ensure that that truly includes women in that language, in that term. Similarly, the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s in the U.S., the aspect of that campaign, "I am a man," so a black man, needing to sort of assert that they are included in the term, the language, the symbol, what is a man in that society. So why it is important to understand the process of social construction of culture. If the social constructions of black skin or female bodies or even pink clothing are related to opportunities or constraints in our society, then those social constructions are powerful. And as I noted, we will explore this more in the last topic of the course when we look at social change and social movements. So I'll remind you once more of the first journal question that potentially you could use any information in this lecture video or the concepts from this video and or the online text to answer the first question. Again, taking your current issue or event that you're looking at and pull something from this topic to address that. So for instance, and actually just that last example there, if the current issue or event that you're looking at is connected to a social movement, a broader social movement around something, what is the is there an aspect of socially constructed, values or beliefs or language or norms or rules that is at the heart of that movement or that issue or that event there.